Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen. Trip Job and Nick Constantino here with Dr. Shah from Georgia State University and the Marketing Roundtable. We were talking a little bit about some of the things that you're now teaching or the curriculum for students these days. And look, when I came through, I was an economics major, and then I was marketing management. And when I got my MBA, I'm a big believer in the being a generalist to some degree, to understand. We talked about math, we talked about the creative side, we talked about advertising, product. That's my one question is, over time, I've seen the shifts, but it seems like for the most part, marketing has been a little bit siloed. So while the curriculum may have changed, maybe it's still there's these experts in one area and people haven't thought about how things come together, which I think is where we're going to go, where Nick was kind of, when we left off section 1. So
yeah, I'm going to avoid the rant, and I'm just going to simply say that you came with an economics background, right? And at its core, economics and supply and demand at its simplest core is everything we do every day of our lives. It is work, it is life, it is home, it is balance, it is food, it is prices, it is everything. And I don't think as a country we have a fundamental understanding of enough. You said people don't like math. Well, math is economics. And I think that one of the biggest things, if you are surprised in that you are getting something for free, let's talk social media for right now, you shouldn't be surprised that your data is the commodity that is being exchanged and what is being made to make money off of, right? Yeah. If you think Facebook is making $1 bajillion like they are without utilizing you as a cog in that machine, you're a fool to how things work. And it's unfortunate to say that, but it's the truth. So I think to segue on what Trip said and about these students, let's talk about social media, because you have put a point of emphasis on it. And what do you think the biggest change is? Look, I know it reaches a lot of people. I know it's cheap to advertise, but talk about that data and how it's used in marketing decisions and purchasing predictions. Talk about that and how you're teaching that to kids, because I think you're going to probably say a couple things that even will surprise me.
Right. So first and foremost, social media has become part of our daily lives, our daily rituals, and whether we like it or not, every single individual, right, goes on social media and spends considerable amount of time, right?
My mother doesn't have an email address yet, so she does not. She doesn't. She plays the one game on her tablet. That's it.
But for better or worse, it is a part of our lives. Yeah.
For most part, and especially the younger consumers, because that's the segment companies care the most about, because those are the ones that represent the highest lifetime value from a customer standpoint. So given the fact that it's become a part of our daily ritual, right, the cardinal rule of marketing is go where the consumers are. And this is where they are to a large extent. So then the question is, what can companies do when it comes to social media? And the way we see it and the way we teach in our classroom, it boils down to 3 big buckets: listening, connecting, publishing. These are the 3 big pillars when it comes to social media strategies. So first is social media listening, and where basically you use social media as a scanning tool. Why is that? Because anytime you want to vent your feelings or you want to say something good, your first go-to thing is social media.
Yeah.
And so you want to really understand, what do companies, what do consumers think about, be it brand or be it just general sentiment or general mood.
And I have to imagine, like most things, sample size is important here, right? Like if you're just going to your best consumers, you're going to get exactly what you want to hear. You have to go for your people who hate you, your 1-star reviews, your 5-star, your people outside of your scope, which social media allows to do. What would those studies used to have cost? To do a full brand study of brand recognition, perception, hundreds of thousands of dollars to do.
6 figures typically.
And so now you can do it with a couple $100 on social media. So sample size is important there, right?
Absolutely. Okay. And more than sample size, right? You will get unbiased opinion, because the moment you do surveys, right, and you incentivize someone, first of all, in today's day, people hate to do surveys.
Yeah.
Right. No matter how much incentive you get, and even if you give them, right, they are in a rush to complete it and cash out on whatever incentive they want. So here you can get a lot more pure sentiments, unbiased, organically developed sentiments. So that's very valuable from a company standpoint. The second thing that really stands out when it comes to social listening or market research through social media is you can get insights in real time. There is no mechanism out there.
It's not a lagging indicator.
Yes. Yeah. So you can launch a movie, and you can, as a production studio, you can watch in real time as the movie gets released how people are expressing their sentiments right then and there. So that's invaluable as far as companies are concerned. So one thing we always encourage or teach our students so that they become future marketers and become effective in their jobs is how to do social listening. 2 years ago, we launched a very innovative course, Social Media Intelligence, which is one of its kind. None of the other schools in Georgia have still launched it. But basically, the entire semester, we teach our students how to gain insights from conversations that happen across platforms, product reviews, online forums, so on and so forth.
And to take the bias out.
Yes.
I mean, that's one of, I think, the biggest things that I saw and had to teach as we brought young people into our organizations is, first off, if they're truly listening, then they're going to take the bias out. But so many times, the questions they want to ask in any type of a research or survey forum or one-to-one, whatever it is, and don't get me started on focus groups, but the way people ask it, they don't realize how much bias they put into it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just not bias, right? It's also a lot of junk that comes.
Right.
When you're dealing with data on social media, there'll be bots accounts, which will be spewing out, data regularly. So you want to put filters in place so that you are, first of all, collecting data from the entire World Wide Web.
That's a full-time job, because
For sure.
as you get smarter, the people trying to scam you get smarter, and it just becomes this rat race for everybody. And if you're not on top of it, you're just going to get bad data. And every one of us has seen what bad data looks like. I mean, I saw an article, someone paid an Instagram influencer like $200,000, and they got like 38 cents of value from it because it was all fake followers that were following them, because these people are ahead of the curve. Somebody cashed in 200 grand for doing nothing.
Yeah. It's garbage in, garbage out, right? So bad data leads to really bad insights. So a very big piece of social media listening is also understanding how to get rid of the junk, first and foremost, using Boolean queries and making sure that you're putting the right filters in so that you collect only relevant data to begin with. So that's the first piece. The second big one is social media, using it as a connection strategy. So companies use that to connect with their consumers, and that can happen multiple ways.
Yeah.
Right. You could run ad campaigns.
Yeah.
You could create customer support centers. Quite a few companies have Twitter handles.
Community forums. I mean,
building communities.
I mean, one of the earliest ones when I was at Kimberly-Clark was the Mothers Forum, essentially, and that was one of the early, really, really smart wins that they had.
Absolutely. Lego has a huge community of builders, and it's super, super popular out there. So you use social media to connect with your consumers. A lot of companies use influencers as mediators to kind of create communities and tap into their followers. But social media could be a very powerful medium to connect with your existing as well as prospective customers. And then the third big one is the publishing strategy. Using social media to publish content and from time to time, and you can use that to engage your customers, entertain them, or inform them about your new products and services.
Or I will say, or be ahead of that and be thought leadership before you even sell something. We put this show out as a thought leadership thing. They're not selling anything, but all of a sudden now the web starts getting bigger and you're doing 100,000 YouTube, and all of a sudden then people start coming to you that you didn't even know. So I think that requires a little bit more strategy.
Right.
But that being said, that is all about content and the way for social media to know these people want to see it and put it in front of them, which you'd have to take hours and so much time to go watch this video, as opposed to social media, which knows by algorithms.
Right.
So I
absolutely.
I was just going to say, in any company that is in some form of consulting or advisement or whatever, really has to have that thought process, because you want to be seen as a thought leader, because you never know when you need that study, need that project. But if you're the ones out there and people, that's an interesting insight, I don't need it today. That's an interesting insight, I don't need it this week. 2 months from now, who are you going to?
And you know what I love about it? And this is probably, I like that social media is good at pointing out the fakers.
Yeah.
Like when you see that guy who's desperately trying to get in and has not one like, and it's like, dude, I get why you're doing this, but you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
Right? You have one person engaging with this, like you're on a soapbox repeating what somebody else said, or you probably had AI generate this. All right. Dr. Shah, I have 2 questions for you, okay? And these are questions based on some of the negative things that I know about social media. The first one is that my understanding is by human nature, brains will always navigate or always gravitate towards the negative. And I think implicit bias is a big part of everything we do. If you look at, for example, The Acolyte, the Star Wars show, they were review bombing that, even though people are still talking about it to this day like it was the best show and it set up all this stuff because of the cast who was in there. So when you talk about it, I think there's bias everywhere. I think it's impossible to remove it, and I think social media is partially to blame for the biases we've created for amplifying those negative things in the sense of making more ad revenue. Counter or agree or disagree, or tell me how that plays in, because again, we're talking about using a medium to remove bias, which has created a lot of these biases that we have there.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. It does bias towards negative because even when it comes to customers, for example, right? If you had a positive or a satisfactory experience, you're less likely to go than you've had a really bad experience. Then you'll take the effort to go and vent your feelings.
And most people would rather read a negative review than a positive review because it's more fun to see you bash somebody than to the positive one. So isn't it at its core the medium you're using to try to remove bias, creating some of that bias? Isn't that fundamentally a problem?
So the bias is not as much of an issue if the negative reviews are true and real, because in a way it also helps to put the companies under check, because they can no longer ignore customers, for example, and pretend that they're doing an awesome job because customers will call the bluff on social media. So it can actually work in the favor of the customers. I think the problem arises when accounts get trolled and you get a lot of negative, fake comments and reviews. And what we've seen is that individual platform owners, so Amazon is a big example. Right. There were a lot of companies that you could pay as a company to post either positive reviews on your own account or negative reviews for your competitors. Right. And these were like small businesses, right? They survive.
Oh, dude, I got one. Someone offered me to buy like a $200 water filter and then offered to give me $250 for a water filter for a positive review, and then I sold it on eBay. Yeah. So I made $500 for like doing nothing. It was insane. Right. And honestly, I felt dirty that I was doing it, but it was $500 dirty, so I did not care.
Yeah, I mean, for small businesses, right, product reviews is their brand equity. They don't really have a strong brand, so product review becomes the proxy. So what we've seen is that the individual companies or platform owners are putting guardrails in place to basically remove some of these biases. Yeah. But is the problem completely solved? No.
Yes,
and it's a difficult problem to solve.
Yeah, and I think bias created. So let me just throw this other one out there because I wanted to finish my soapbox. So here's another problem. Okay. Social media has completely exacerbated the short attention spans that people have, right? Even we used to look at MySpace, and then it was Facebook, then it was Instagram, then it was TikTok. The window's getting shorter and shorter. So you're saying that these people are advertising because of lifetime value. However, all we're doing is shortening the attention span so they move from product to product even quicker. So you look at influencers. My problem with influencers, they're going to sell a lot for you, but the next influence thing that comes out, people are just going to buy that, right? You saw how fast in a certain generation, Nikes are by the wayside. New Balance is selling dad shoes to women on the runway. What the hell happened? So by doing this, are you really advertising people whose lifetime value is going to be the greatest if their attention span moves so quickly, right? We talk about radio, for example. One of the things I love about radio is that people understand the relationship of why they're getting content for free, so they engage with the advertisers. So their lifetime value is probably actually higher because they're going to stick with that group, as opposed to at 18 years old, you're telling me you think someone's going to give you a social media ad and you're going to follow that brand for the rest of your life? It's impossible nowadays. Attention span swing. So my question is, if social media has at least exacerbated this short attention span, is it really the best idea to be looking at people as having the highest lifetime value at 17 years old nowadays?
So again, it's how you implement your messaging and what kind of strategy you put on social media. And we've seen companies, for example, like Olay, or Dove, that does a tremendous job, posting social messages on YouTube. So if you go to the official YouTube channel of Dove, they stand for Real Beauty, and they have a lot of informational content, that talks about how toxic beauty advices are put out on social media, and what can kids do or parents do, to protect themselves. So it all boils down to, how you execute your social media.
But isn't that as much thought leadership? Isn't that as much thought leadership? Because you're blending, you're selling a product, but you're saying we are.
But it also goes back to listening. I mean, I'm glad, first off, you brought up the idea of lifetime value that is being taught.
Yes.
First off, I think it goes back to listening and understanding, right, the users, and then understanding your product. Okay, so the example, I mean, you're right with some of the examples, New Balance and some of what I would call discretionary, trendy type items. Okay, so.
But that's what's advertised most on social media. I mean, it's a smorgasbord selling the same 10
But what
pairs of
Dr. Shaw is talking about Dove. You think about all the feminine hygiene products, the family care products, things like that. There is a value. How often do you switch your toothpaste? How long have you utilized the toothpaste you've had forever? How long have you utilized your toilet paper you have forever?
No chance. Whatever's on sale in the store. They're all the same exact freaking thing. Who cares?
Well, but I would say there's a lot of people who develop that loyalty early on.
I have never met one person in my life that goes to a store and buys the same brand. They buy what is on sale at that moment at that store.
Yeah, really? It says, here's a great made for Dr. Shaw.
Wow. They're all the same. That's the definition of a commodity. They're all the exact same. The only differentiator is price. They're all the same thing. Now, Dove I agree with, because their campaign also translates to television, and they are making everybody feel good and even, and they really stick to it. Because a lot of people, they're full of it. They say that they do that. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I just think that attention spans have shrunk so much that we're using this medium to say lifetime value when these people, you're incentivizing them to just switch so quickly. You're almost doing the opposite, is you're taking away from the lifetime value by using this medium. I don't think there's an exact answer. I'm just, from what I've heard about social media, some of the negative things, they're actually bad for advertising, and I'm wondering how much money is being put in there. Are these things going to start manifesting themselves? That's all I ask.
And I think it's a bigger problem. Attention span in general is declining, and what companies are doing or platforms are doing, they're adapting. Why do you think TikTok and Instagram Reels are so popular? Right, because they feed off the short attention span. Right, instead of putting a 10-minute YouTube, nobody has time to see that. I'd rather see a 1-minute TikTok video and be entertained and get all the information I want. So it's a natural thing that is happening, and it's not just social media. It's also technology and many other factors which are making us as humans more, gravitating more towards shorter attention span. But one of the other problem, which I think is a bigger problem, is the algorithms on social media that basically keep you glued onto the platform. And more often than not, it has a negative consequence than positive, because too much dopamine release. There's a lot of research around that.
The way I was explained this by a very smart person worth a lot of money is, when you go to the casino, when you gamble, you don't care if you win or lose. It's the rush of what's going to come next. So when that roulette wheel spins, your dopamine, if you win or lose, doesn't change. It's that spin that gets that dopamine. And my understanding is we have gotten so advanced in our neuroscience and the way we biology that we have this down to an art, and that all these platforms are doing is trying to trigger and elicit these responses, which is why depression is up so high, because if you flood dopamine, there's got to be the opposite side of it. So that's the other problem, is the algorithms are getting more and more attuned to that.
And that's a huge problem, because if you look at mental problems among especially the younger demographics, it's off the charts. And there's actually a very interesting graph that shows when was iPhone introduced and how did the number of cases of mental issues and amongst younger demographics, and what was the thing. And you see a huge spike after iPhone was the first iPhone.
So let me ask you this: do you think that any big brand out there might take the chance to go, hey, we're going to support social media vacation. We're taking the month of October off. You're not going to see anything from us. We encourage you to do the same. Do you think there's brands that may take that approach at some point?
I would find it very difficult, because they are in for profit. And till the time that consumers are glued onto social media, they're going to stay.
I think, look, I just finished reading Sapiens, which was pretty much a history of the world, followed all the way up to now. And one of the things they said that also aligns with, you can be rich poor, you can have kids, family. None of that stuff matters for happiness. It's all about your social network and who you're attached to and who you meet with and who you're friends with. And the iPhone, since that advent, when text message came, those personal connections were less important because you had these friends and you were able to text and you had these groups, and then social media, oh, it's a social media friend. And I think as much as social media is the problem, I think it's just technology in general that took us out of our tribe nature where we want to be around family and friends. When I grew up in New York, everybody was still around their family. There were little pockets of Greeks and Italian and community, and you were there and your grandparents take care of you. And now we fragmented.
And COVID exacerbated that.
Well, I think it did, but I think also forced people to realize how important community was. So some people got closer knit. But again, I don't want to blame social media for all of it. So I think Chip's question is good. Do you see companies start reacting to this and start having a little more self-awareness into the negative sides and using that as part of their responsible marketing?
Yeah, so as I said, right, Dow is a great example, and so there are some companies who are basically taking a stance in terms of what kind of messaging we want to put out, and some of it they are blending it with some of their CSR efforts, and putting out more social messages, more around how can they for example consume products more responsibly, and those kind of factors. So. Let's be clear, right? There are a lot of positive things as well, that social media brings.
Yeah. What, you think we were going to go easy on you? You think we were going to go easy on you?
During any crisis, right? Major crisis, we've seen that news propagation through social media has been life-saving media for many cases, as compared to mainstream media.
Yeah.
So again, and there are quite a few. So I think it all boils down to how we utilize it.
And therefore it's how it's taught to the next generation of marketers.
Right. And
it changes so fast. So you're teaching something that could change tomorrow, but you want to still give the fundamentals and the principles, right? That's what we're trying to focus on.
Yeah. So our goal is to make sure that students get a 360-degree view of what social media is and how can it be used for good as well as for the harm.
Yeah.
And that way, if we make them fully aware of every single thing that social media can do, or good or bad, hopefully they will make the right choices.
I agree. And I think this has happened in every medium, right? I remember, I swear to God, when I was in Queens, when I was growing up, we only had regular broadcast TV, okay? Then I moved to Long Island, we get this nice house, and I have cable, and all of a sudden, Beavis and Butthead and WWF opened my eyes, and I'm like, whoa! They're beating the crap out of each other. They're cursing on television. I can see my life trajectory change immediately. Yeah. The next day, I took my brother, tried to body slam him on a bed, threw him through a wall. Like, it changed so quickly. So it's not just this. The advent of radio was terrifying to people. Like anytime we have these structural shifts and cultural shifts. So let's not go off the deep end. We always adjust. We always figure it out. We are good people. No one can say that social media is the root cause of this because so many things have changed. The way our diets are terrible.
Right. The application's it's a new application of things we've been doing for a long time.
Just, learn fundamentals, be good with your core fundamentals. Don't put your head in a sandbox. That was the one thing I realized. If you want to structure, if you want to be with any kind of content or marketing, you have to be involved in social media. So I think at its core, those are the important things. And I think when we get back from the break, we're going to really grill you. So if you thought this was tough, wait to see what the next one is.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3, and we'll be right back.